Okay, we'll call a meeting to order of the MPO TAC, Technical Advisory Committee. Today is February 7th and it's 1:30, just past 1:30. First order of business is call to order and introduction. I believe that's a roll call.
So Gail will do that?
Gail will do.
Jeff Sims,
Hi, I'm Michelle Jenkins. I'm here to sit in for Jeff Sims.
thank you, Michelle. Mike Williams,
Here.
Brian McCarthy,
Here.
Jonathan Scott,
Here.
Brian Pissarro,
Here.
Michael English,
He was going to be virtual, but he had to be excused today.
Cal Hardy. Robert Frey, Anna Quinones,
Here.
Gina Evans,
Here.
and I know Christine is also in the room.
Here.
Leland Dykes,
Here.
Julie Ham,
Mark Hudson for Julie Ham.
Mark Hudson in person,
Yes.
Danny Jorgensen,
Here.
Jay Collins,
Here.
Melissa Leinhart,
Hi, I'm here participating virtually.
Nicole Sutton.
Shadleen Apollon here for Nicole Sutton.
Shadleen, I've got you marked virtual, thank you. And Sarah Caper, non-voting member.
Here.
We do have an in-person quorum, and some members are participating virtually because of medical reasons and the local declaration of emergency. For recording purposes, please announce your name prior to speaking.
Okay, thank you. First item on the agenda is public comment. I don't see anyone in the room to speak to public comment, but I don't know if there's anyone logged in virtually to speak. If there is, please speak up. Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to approval of minutes. And this is minutes from December 15th and January 3rd. Any changes to the minutes or any comments on those two meeting minutes? I believe the December meeting was the joint one with the CAC, right? No comments. Can we have a motion?
Jay Collins, motion to approve. Second, Jonathan Scott.
Okay, so we have a motion by Jay and a second by Jonathan. Any other comments before we vote? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously. So the first action item on the agenda is the safety performance targets for CY 2022. And I believe Connor McDonald from the TPO staff will be presenting.
So Lionel, please give Connor the tools to present.
He's set.
Perfect. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Perfect. I'm Connor McDonald, here to present the 2022 safety performance targets. I also have my supervisor with me, Dr. Johnny Wong, and Gina Torres may be able to answer some questions, help us answer some questions at the end. So these performance targets come out of MAP 21 legislation that requires TPOs and state DOTs to track performance for each measure listed on this slide. In years past, the MPO has, or the TPO has elected to track year-end fatality totals and motorcycle fatalities as additional safety measures. This is the 7th year we're setting these targets, and the process requires that we set realistic data-driven targets. So our methodology is to project the number of crashes and fatalities for the next given year and subtract the crash reduction benefits that are achievable given anticipated level of investment. This is to expect a 1% reduction along all crash types. For the first target, we're reviewing annual actual fatalities. This is a record high in 2021 at 255 crashes. With trend prediction and a 1% reduction factor, we aim to set a target of 253 fatalities. The next target is annual fatalities on a 5-year rolling average. Since this is an average over 5 years, the number is not expected to decrease, but we hope to set a target of no more than 224 fatality crashes on a 5-year rolling average. So this map shows where fatal crashes occurred in 2021. As you can see, they're along much of the major roadways, especially the east-west corridors. The third target is motorcycle fatalities on a 5-year rolling average. For this, we are predicting a decrease in that average with the target at no more than 36.13 5-year average or fatalities on a 5-year rolling average. The fourth target is annual serious injuries on a 5-year rolling average. This has been steadily decreasing, but we are proposing a target of no more than 1,107 serious injuries on a 5-year average basis. The next target is annual non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. Based on the statistics, there is an increase in the 5-year average. We are proposing a target of no more than 232 non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. The sixth target is fatality rate per 100 million vehicle miles traveled on a 5-year rolling average. Since we don't have reliable volume data until the middle of the year, we have predicted a 1.03% growth rate in VMT. Overall, we are proposing a realistic data-driven target of no more than 1.59 fatalities per 100 million vehicle miles traveled on a 5-year rolling average basis. Our final target is serious injury rate per 100 million vehicle miles traveled. We have seen a steady decline in this trend, and we are proposing a target of no more than 7.49 serious injuries per 100 million vehicle miles traveled on a 5-year rolling average basis. The next slide is showing where we did and didn't meet our targets in 2021. We set a target of no more than 190 annual fatalities. The actual was 255, so we did not meet that target. The next was a 5-year average target of 195 fatalities, and the average was 212, so we did not meet that target. The serious injuries on a 5-year rolling average, we set a target of 1,201 and had an actual of 1,025, so we did meet that target. For motorcycle fatalities, we set a target of 34.95 fatalities on a 5-year rolling average. We did not meet that target. Non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries, we met that target dead on at 230. For fatalities per 100 million vehicle miles traveled, we set a target of 1.38. We did not meet that target. Finally, for serious injuries per 100 million vehicle miles traveled, we set a target in 2021 of 8.49. We did not meet this target. We did meet this target. The next slide is intended to get us thinking on what actions we can take to address some of these concerning numbers. Currently, the Vision Zero program has 4 action tracks to increase safety. One being short-term low-cost treatments like Paint Saves Lives, another being equitable enforcement, the third being public education strategies, and the fourth being policies and programs. So for the future, we'd like to discuss what crash details and fatality details we can provide, the TPO staff can provide to assist in making informed data-driven decisions. Finally, here's our list of 2022 safety performance targets. Again, the realistic data-driven approach tells us to set a target for no more than 253 annual actual fatalities, no more than 224 annual fatalities on a 5-year rolling average, no more than 36.13 motorcycle fatalities on a 5-year rolling average, no more than 1,107 annual serious injuries on a 5-year rolling average, no more than 232 annual non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries, no more than 1.59 fatalities per 100 million vehicle miles traveled, and no more than 7.49 serious injuries per 100 million vehicle miles traveled. With that, the recommended actions today are to approve the calendar year 2022 safety performance targets and forward them to the TPO board. It's also to submit suggestions to improve performance in high crash areas and/or what additional data we can provide to make informed decisions. That concludes my presentation, and I'm here to answer any questions along with Dr. Johnny Wong and Gina Torres.
All right, thank you, Connor. Any questions from the group?
Yeah, with those 4 policies, one of them was equitable enforcement. Can you elaborate? What do you mean by that, and how is that supposed to lead to less fatalities and accidents?
I can answer that, Connor.
Oh, okay.
So, okay. I'm not stated, but it's just hard for you to hear. I want you to hear me. That was one of the action tracks and Vision Zero action plan. When we say that, we are talking about, we call it consistent fair enforcement, where if we have noted in our data that a particular action is happening in this one spot in town, like someone's going through the stop sign, that the police, the law enforcement are aware of that particular type of problem there and enforce for that issue. Not necessarily don't look at anything else, but keep that in mind. What's more effective also, and another recommendation in the action tracks and strategies is automated enforcement. Automated enforcement takes out of the equation profiling and some of the other concerns that communities may have about enforcement in general. There is actually a bill currently in the legislature for speed cameras around schools during school zones. That's something that I'll be presenting to the TPO board on this Wednesday, and I hope that you guys would listen in. Based on comments that I got from the other committees that Connor received from the other committees, comments like yours, just asking questions about enforcement, but that was one of them, that one action we think that the TPO board can take this work on immediately and this year. There's a number of other things. I didn't want to feed you too many of the ideas, but I might as well just tell you that a lot of the things we heard, like we need more funding for complete streets or other strategies. We need to focus on the high entry network. Some other things all came out of the speed management action plan. So what I'm going to be presenting Wednesday are strategies directly out of the speed management action plan, like outreach, focusing on the high entry network, automated enforcement. We just so happen to have something that we can actually weigh in on, and a couple other. I can't remember everything that I was going to present on that. There was one other thing I did want to show you though. There's a couple of other. It's funding for funding. There's a grant through the new federal bill that we can have a concerted effort to apply for some of that money, specifically for Vision Zero. It's called Streets and Roads for All. And then when the VOCC makes some decisions about the surtax, that might be a request that they, again, maybe identify specific funding for safety. So I'm kind of telling you about my presentation, but that came from the committees and things that we've been thinking about in towns about the TPO board's going to want to, who wants to say that 253 people next year or whatever, well, that's how many died this year. Our goal, our vision is 0, but we have to have these goals that we can track. And the feds don't want it to be, they want something real. Yeah. So sorry, on to your enforcement question. So what was your concern or interest in that question?
I was curious what was that.
Yeah, it's that using the data and automated enforcement, it could start out at a $50 fine. But repeat offenders, the 4th time you get one of those tickets could be 500. It's how other communities and cities around this country have used automated enforcement camera speed enforcement. It started out around schools and it kind of grew onto their high entry network. So baby steps. I hope we do get this bill passed so that we can see how it works, see if it's effective. Any other ideas? I just blurted out all the ideas.
I think that's definitely something, much like red light cameras, that can get very political and, and we're not ultimately the ones that make those decisions on whether those are implemented in the legislature. But so it'll be interesting to see what happens.
I thought when I'm at the community traffic safety team meetings, I don't know if any of you go to that, I thought the law enforcement I didn't know how they would feel about it, and they kind of they like it, they support it. They like the texting law too, because they're like, we can use our time and effort somewhere else, so I'm really hoping it'll pass, but.
Any other questions? Jay?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Connor, that was a great presentation. Data is data, they're numbers. We're going through the pandemic. There was a lot less drivers, but the numbers tell us that there's still a lot of accidents that are occurring out there. And I was wondering if there's any comparable data to other jurisdictions that may show that they too did not actually see anything better out of the pandemic on the VMTs with those types of crashes and deaths and whatnot.
I'm not too sure about other sorry, Dana, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry, Connor, you can't see that I'm raising my hand, but I would like you to go ahead and answer and then I'll follow up. Or unless you want me to.
Okay. Yes, absolutely. So we haven't compared other jurisdictions, but we do know that this was addressed as a national trend, especially the high fatalities and lower serious injuries. So we did that in the research that we did notice that it was a national trend that was addressed by the US DOT Secretary in a presentation.
So let me add to that, because this is something we're all putting our heads around to do what I do. We were like, what is the deal? Why are we so much, it was across the country higher in 2021. We discovered, when I looked at the data, we had, in 2019, a more normal year, there was a couple hours of a day that had over 100 serious fatal and serious crashes. There were probably almost 5 or 6 hours a day that barely had 25 serious crashes and injuries, like 2, 3, 4, or 5 a.m. 2021, there was no hour except for one that was under 25, like just at 25. All of them were above. By working from home, we have the option to take trips, I mean, not the wee hour ones, but throughout the day on roads that are not congested. Congestion actually slows you down. So these roads, our trips are being taken all throughout the day, which is kind of amazing, the graph that showed that. So our roads are, a lot of them are built for peak hours, so there's extra lanes and less people on them, so you could drive faster. And that's why we think the fatalities jumped so high, because of the hours a day and the openness of the roadways. It's pretty eye-opening to me when I look at the data. But the weird thing is, and Connor alluded to it, our serious injuries went down, which is so strange to me that the fatals went up so much. And we're grappling with that. And I know that it might not just be this, but they say seatbelt use was down. So that's the difference between the serious injury and fatality. And then the EMS, emergency response, we heard across the country too, that they were, with COVID, they were very busy. And they weren't able, maybe to get to that crash as fast or right away. And that would be the difference. I mean, we can't figure it out, but that might have been the difference between the fatalities that are surviving. So those were some weird things going on.
Hey Jay, this is Johnny Wong. We sat in on a FDOT workshop a couple of weeks back and listened to a safety presentation. They were kind of summarizing the trends that we've been seeing all across the district. And unfortunately, Hillsborough seemed to have the biggest increase of fatalities from 2020 through 2021. The rest of the counties, Citrus, Hernando, Pasco, they were all fairly stable, just very minor swings, plus or minus maybe 1 to 2 fatalities since 2019. Pinellas had a huge jump from last year through 2021. They went from, it looks like 100 to almost 150. And that's kind of where we see ourselves. From 2020 through last year, we had like a 30+% increase in fatalities, and Pinellas did too. So overall, the trend across the district is that fatalities are increasing, but very concentrated in the dense urban areas.
And Johnny, the VMT really didn't go, it's about back to where it was before the pandemic.
Now it is, yeah.
We just had so many more cars.
Yeah.
It's just
I mean, obviously our roads are built for speed. We've talked about that for years and years and years. And so if there are no cars on them, then you have a tendency to speed, right? I mean, you do. You have a tendency to speed. You have to watch your speed.
They allow you to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I thought the interesting thing, with the other counties is, did anybody do anything to attempt to actually curb speeding because of that, Did they take the 3 lanes and drop it down to 2 lanes because there was nobody out there, so you didn't need all the additional capacity, or anything else? Or those areas that went through complete streets, that's going to be an interesting thing to watch, because now will they see a jump because they just have the improvement going through it? I don't know. It's interesting stuff. Again, Johnny and Connor, thank you very much.
I hope to see more operational, just because it's cheaper to do. Honestly, like, signal progression. If you go 35 miles an hour, you'll catch those lights green. Like, we should help get those.
Well, I've seen places where they actually have signs that say, if you go 35 or whatever that progression is, the intent is you'll hit most of the lights green.
There's
I
definitely
mean, we
things
don't
we
really
can
do a
do.
good job of that. And you see these people speed from one to the next, and if they just slow down a little bit, they just,
A lot of it's education. So the board for that too, to ask for their help with all their agencies and the people they know to help us with social media every month. I'll give them the information if they give it out to their groups, or even dynamic messaging, I think that's helpful. DOT did some great work on Courtney Campbell for speeding. And if you speed, you'll get a $175 ticket, whatever it was. This, it's hard to change behavior. But anyway, I think Hunter has some tasks where we need action.
yeah, we do.
Not to beat a dead horse, but Connor, there was one chart you had, I think it was the chart for serious injuries. Could you go back to it? I think out of all the charts you showed, it was the one chart that was
Absolutely.
like a consistent, downward trend. Back up that.
No.
Yeah, if I recall, out of all the charts you showed, this is the only one that shows that. And I think what seems amazing to me is we're not talking about just 1 or 2 year period. We're going back to 2012. It's been consistently going down. I can't help but wonder what is behind that. I don't know if it's maybe because cars are getting safer with with the new technology that's in vehicles, with automatic braking and other stuff like this. But again, it just adds to the mystery. It's we're seeing a consistent pattern going back to 2012. Well, somebody's doing something right.
Right. And if fatalities for motorists were also going down, it would make more sense to me, because I think you have a great point. Vehicle technology is, better. Kind of unfortunately, in some ways, our vehicles are also very big, some of them, and that does lead to a fatality of a pedestrian, but maybe the safety of the motorist. So, it's really an interesting conversation. I think you're on point with.
And to be clear, the fatality information, does that include, do those fatalities include both motorists and non-motorists? So it's a mixture in that figure. Okay.
But I've broken them out myself, and it's across the board. Motorists, motorcyclists have actually, we still have a terrible trend here, but they're a little bit lower.
Any other questions? I did have one question. So Connor, in the slide near the end, you showed several of these targets, probably over half of them, that we were not meeting. And this might even be a question for Johnny, but is there some ramification, or is there something somebody's going to do at some point and say, hey, you're not meeting your targets, you need to either reprioritize funding, or that will be mandated upon us? Or is this kind of our own thing? And obviously we want to do better, all of these, and it's really for our own purposes.
Hey, Mike, this is Johnny. No, there's no penalties for failing to hit our targets. There are penalties for the state. In fact, I think that they had to have a workshop with Federal Highway maybe a year or 2 ago and work on their target setting methodology. But there's no implications for us. as far as the TPO's discretionary funds, I don't think that there's a ton that we can do about reprioritizing funds for safety. I mean, that's our #2 priority, and that program category fills up with projects every year in the TIP. We fund projects. The only thing that we can say is, I think my hope is that a lot will come from the workshop that Gina maybe has or hasn't mentioned yet, but the workshop where we get all the jurisdictions together and talk about what projects we're moving forward with safety, what we've done, and maybe if our visions are cohesive, we can make sure that there are no gaps left.
Yeah, there's that one fund in the state that the feds could say you have to use this funding for safety because it could be used for different things, but the state already uses it for that, so we're not going to get penalized for that. And I think, Johnny, what you're referring to, and it was remember, I was on my slides, the last request from the TPO board is that by the end of the year, we have a mini little summit and ask the agencies that have the high 50 injury reporters, top 50, to come back and report to us on what progress they've been able to make, whether it's redesigning it already or at least it's in the pipeline, or we're looking at it. So we're gonna kind of evaluate how well we did.
Okay, thank you.
Gina, just want to acknowledge for the record that there are 2 questions from Bob Fry in the chat. The first one says, what has changed? Enforcement, ? Volume, ? The second one said, has anyone looked at increased volume in reduced lanes? So where a road diet has been done. Do we have more vehicles and PEDs and less space?
Bob, to answer your question, looking at the trend since the travel restrictions from the pandemic, last year when we reported this out, and even the year before, we saw VMT go way down. At some points during the summer of 2020, I guess, traffic volumes were down by more than 10% on a lot of the major roads. And toward the end of the year, we started to see them recover. I'm not sure if they've rebounded to pre-pandemic levels. Before the pandemic, we kind of assumed that VMT would increase about 3% a year. I don't know if we're there yet, but certainly we've seen, just in my own experience, a lot of traffic, as Gina mentioned, peak spreading. So we're seeing not as much of a concentration of commuters during the AM and PM peak, kind of spread out throughout the day, and that's resulting in a lot more injury crashes because folks have a little bit more room to move around, they're driving faster, and hence the collisions are happening at higher speeds. I can't speak to what's going on with law enforcement, although I know Gina and I have been coordinating on a presentation, inviting someone from maybe Hillsborough County or one of the jurisdictions to come talk about enforcement efforts. And the pedestrian, I'll have to defer to Wade about head and bike counts, but 2020 was very high in terms of non-motorized fatalities, I recall, and then 2021 significantly less. When the pandemic hit, we saw, I would guess, unprecedented numbers of folks riding their bike and walking because they weren't able to travel. And certainly a reflection of what happened policy-wise nationally in 2021, we didn't see quite as many of those injury crashes last year. I hope that answers your questions.
Oh, there we go. I'm sorry. I apologize. I was on mute. I've even noticed just coming into work in the morning that just seems to be more crashes in general. And that's what I was trying to figure out, what's changed that's done it. I know that we're growing very fast. I know that we're changing a lot of the land use dynamics, trying to do that. So there is going to be a growth period in there that we're going to have to deal with. I'm just trying to figure out what do we change, and what have other places that have gone through this growth curve done to deal with it? And that's where I'm looking at, is different solutions and what can we build in and what can we take advantage of in the future to try to deal with it going forward, because we're not getting smaller. They're coming. So we're going to have to figure out a way to deal with it. But That's why I was asking. I'm, just curious. So thank you very much, Johnny. I appreciate it.
No, that's kind of what I was alluding to in talking about the workshop Gina is hoping to propose. I hope that all the jurisdictions can come together and share their experiences. We have the national report, but we can never be certain whether or not our experience is mimicking what's going on nationally. That report said increase in speeds, fewer drivers wearing their seatbelt, increase in distracted driving. Gina, I know I'm missing some others, but we would have to do a lot deeper analysis locally to figure out if we're replicating what's going on at the national level.
I'm just curious, Johnny, one more thing, and I apologize for taking this long, but I'm curious what your thoughts on this are, being with your data background. There are aggressive driving. Even if we don't have the traffic ticket record or something to show it, through the different ways of reporting and things like that, is there a way to find out? Because the perception is from driving that aggressive driving is higher now. I don't have data to back it up, but I'm just curious, is it out there? What are we seeing? Is there a way to track that, to see what's going on with that type of stuff? Because like I said, the data you're showing here does reflect the perception of like the drive-in and stuff like that of people that I've heard. So I'm just curious. That might be something to look at if we could pull some data from areas on if people are reporting it, complaining about it, doing something like that more, even if it's not peer reviewable at TRB level, but at least gives us an idea of a trend. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I don't have any experience with that, but I think it's a good idea. I can certainly see some value in that. So I'd love to touch base with you and maybe we can talk about some ways to come up with that data.
It's on the crash report. If the law enforcement checks that, then we have the data for it. And we have looked at it before. We looked at the speed management action plan. It was like 87% of fatal crashes were attributed to aggressive driving or something, some crazy number. I have some data I can share with you, Bob. And some of those longer term solutions like transit-oriented development around some, premium transit in the future is really going to help too. So people don't have to go so far and can get to their jobs or their, that's going to take some time. But hopefully this year we can make some, some stuff to even just keep the line from that going up would be nice. These are people that we're talking about and families, so it's heartbreaking.
Okay. Anna, did you have, or were you just gonna?
No, because I know he put a comment in the comment box and mine was mixed in there, so.
Okay. So any other questions? Okay. If seeing none, can we have a motion?
Jonathan Scott, motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion. Can we have a second?
Jay Collins, second.
There was a motion from Jonathan, a second from Jay. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Seeing none, motion carries unanimously. Next item on the agenda is low-cost air quality monitoring pilot study. And I believe Lizzie is she presenting that one?
She is presenting, but Lionel, if you could give Wade the controls, he's going to forward her slides for her.
It's done.
Thanks.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lizzie Eric, and I will be presenting on the low-cost air quality monitoring pilot study. Thank you, Wade, for helping me through this. So unfortunately, I'm not able to turn on my video right now, so I appreciate you all bearing with me with the non-video presentation. So I'm a fellow with the TPO, and I am enrolled in the USF's Masters in Urban and Regional Planning program. And so I have enjoyed my time with the TPO and working on this project. And I am glad to be here with you guys to provide you with an update and then also to hear your feedback on the study thus far. So we kicked off this study in September 2021. And since then, we've coordinated and met regularly with the project team that consists of researchers from the University of South Florida's College of Public Health, Hillsborough County's Environmental Protection Commission and the Federal Highway Administration. And if I'm not mistaken, I actually believe you have one of our project team members in the room with you today, Michelle Jenkins from the EPC. So Michelle, if you have anything to say, feel free to jump in. Today, we'll be going over the background information about the study, what we've accomplished to date, and then also what's coming up next. Next slide, please. So we'll start with the project overview just to understand what we want to achieve and how we'll do that. The project, or the purpose of the study, is stated on the slide, is to study air quality in communities that are most impacted by transportation-related air pollution, or TRAP, and also provide the community with access to that air quality data. So what we're looking to achieve, our overarching goals of the project are to increase access to local air quality data. So this is so people understand the quality of air in which they live and breathe and go about their daily lives. We also want to inform future transportation planning with more data on local air quality. This goal goes hand in hand with our third goal, to equitably improve air quality so communities are not disproportionately affected by TRAP. This pilot study is really the first major step to accomplishing these goals. So you can see that in our objectives. And our objectives are to establish pilot monitoring sites within the communities, and then collect and share that data with the communities, specifically using low-cost air quality monitors. And then also, from what we find with the pilot study, then develop methods to establish a larger community monitoring network. So as I mentioned, these objectives are really reflective of the pilot phase. We're in the initial testing portion of the study, so we're really working out the kinks. We want to see what works best, what doesn't. And this way, when we do move forward with that larger community monitoring network, we can do so with a solid foundational understanding of the equipment, really what's important to the community, and how to implement it in tandem with the community effectively. Next slide, please. So this slide, I wanted to bring everyone's attention to the regulatory and low-cost air quality monitors, because this is actually a question that we've received from the community so far, which is, why are we specifically using low-cost monitors, and what does that actually mean? So I'll do so in comparison with the regulatory monitors. So as you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, there's a map of the EPC regulatory monitors. Those are managed by Hillsborough County's EPC, and we have 8 different monitors. These monitors are super expensive, and they're also very large, and they're in a fixed location. So all of these features, they actually make a really great comparison tool for the low-cost monitors, because they're used to make sure that the area is in compliance with government air quality regulations. So the low-cost air quality monitors, these refer to emerging types of sensors. They're significantly smaller and more affordable than regulatory monitors. There's also been a lot of work lately being done by researchers and the companies that make them to evaluate and develop low-cost monitors that provide reliable data. So low cost by no means means low quality. And some of the major benefits for using these low-cost monitors in this study is that by decreasing the cost, it allows us to increase the number of monitors and expand where we can actually monitor that air quality. So it gives us greater coverage of air quality measurements. We also gain a localized understanding of the air quality. So we can better understand the quality of air in the places where our residents spend most of their time. And third, they're very user-friendly. They're significantly more accessible to the average user. You really don't need to be a scientist to make sense of the data or an engineer to put it all together. And a lot of the companies actually provide data visualizations or crowdsourced maps with the data that's already made publicly available by users. And next slide, please. All right, so this is just a very brief overview, and we'll go into more detail in the following slides. But here we'll briefly go over what we've done so far, where we're at, and where we're going next. So as I mentioned, we started off in September, and then in October through December, we selected and purchased the monitors, and then installed monitors at the control sites, which is the EPC regulatory site at Monroe, and began testing the low-cost air quality monitors. We also identified community monitoring areas and began engaging with community partners. So right now we're in this second section, January through March, where we'll be conducting a community focus group this month. And then also we'll be selecting the community monitoring pilot sites with the community, and then following that, installing the community monitors. And then that rolls into April through June, where USF will be collecting and analyzing the air quality data from the community sites. And then we'll also be doing public engagement with those sites. And lastly, through August, we'll be reporting the findings and then also bring that out to the community. Next slide. So now we'll just go into more detail regarding what we've done with each of those steps. Next slide. All right, so we'll start with the monitors. So USF conducted really extensive research on the different types of affordable air quality monitors. They selected 2 different types of monitors to purchase: the Purple Air particulate matter monitor and the CareSense nitrogen dioxide monitor. So the Purple Air monitor, this one, as I mentioned, it monitors particulate matter, and particulate matter was selected for monitoring because it can lead to adverse health effects such as aggravated asthma, premature death for people who have heart and lung disease, and then also it can increase respiratory symptoms along with a slew of other health-related issues. This transportation sector is a pretty major contributor to particulate matter in urban areas. So it's produced from emissions from combustion, from brake wear, tire wear, and then also it becomes elevated close to roadways because it's resuspended from the movement of traffic. So the CareSense monitor, that one monitors nitrogen dioxide, and nitrogen dioxide was selected because it's primarily formed when things burn. So for example, burning fuel. The primary source of nitrogen dioxide is vehicle exhaust. So that was one reason it was selected for monitoring. The other reason is that the levels of nitrogen dioxide, they actually tend to remain elevated near roadways as well. And it's frequent, for that reason, it's frequently used as a substitute for measuring the long list and really complex mix of traffic-related air pollutants. So part of the selection process involved conducting small-scale field testing. And so USF did that. And in addition to researching air quality, they're also actually testing these monitors in the pilot phase. So part of what they're doing to test them is they set up the control site to compare the low-cost air quality monitors with the regulatory monitors at Hillsborough County, at the Monroe site, at the regulatory site, where they test and calibrate those monitors, and they also compare the data to the regulatory monitor data. So the following phase for the monitors is going to be to install the monitors in the community. And next slide, please. Thank you. So this slide, I wanted to put this slide in here because this is an example of one of the crowdsourced maps from Purple Air. This is actually, it's a screenshot, but it provides real-time air quality data on particulate matter. And so what you're seeing is a screenshot of the map, and these are all monitors across Tampa Bay that have been made publicly available. These aren't our monitors, these are just monitors that people already have. It's a 1 week average of the particulate matter in the area. And so you can actually see up in Tampa, you can see up here if you follow 275, that's actually right along or right next to Hillsborough High School, which is right along 275. So we've already got a start there with 2 Purple Air monitors there that they have publicly available. So a large part of this study is really making sure that the data is accessible. And this is just an example of how we can use the company's crowdsourced maps to facilitate that. Next slide, please. Another major component that we've worked on over the past couple months has included identifying communities to monitor. So since we are still in the pilot phase, we do have a limited number of monitors that we can deploy. And so we narrowed down the areas before bringing the pilot study to the community, who will then help us identify those final sites. We use 3 main criteria to select the community areas. One of which is an environmental factor. The second one is the demographic factors. And the third were opportunities for community access and engagement. So we'll break that down a little bit. The environmental factor that we looked at was proximity to I-275 and I-4. These communities are very impacted by TRAP due to their close proximity to those very high volume roads. The demographic factors that we considered were low-income communities and communities with high proportions of people of color. These are communities that have been historically underserved and unsettled by inequitable planning decisions and practices of the past. So we kind of converged those, and you can actually see that represented on the maps on the right-hand side of the screen. These 2 maps are from the EPA's Environmental Justice Mapping Tool. And it was created using the Environmental Justice Index for traffic proximity. And the EJ index, it actually combines one environmental indicator and then also the demographic indicators. And the environmental indicator for traffic is proximity to high volume roads. And then also the demographic factor that they use for the EJ index is low income populations and the percentage of people of color. So on these maps, you can see that the higher the proximity and the percentage, the higher the community's potential susceptibility to harmful environmental impacts, in this case, traffic-related air pollutants. Once we had mapped those, then we kind of homed in on the areas that would offer opportunities for community access and engagement. So for example, community organizations, local businesses, schools, parks, etc. So right now we're working with the community to identify the actual sites where the monitors will be installed, but we did conduct a few preliminary site visits just to give us a more hands-on understanding of the logistical requirements or the hurdles that we might face when selecting a site for the community sites. And next slide, please. So based on the community monitoring areas that we identified using that criteria, we moved forward with the public engagement and introduced the study to the community. The community members are they're the people who live and work there. So we really want the community to help us identify where we will actually place these monitors, specifically in these communities. We have approximately 5 community monitoring sites where we can place monitors, and each will have a different level of engagement. It just really depends on what site's identified. So the next phase of public engagement will be a focus group in February to get feedback on the study from the communities, gauge their interest in hosting sites, and then also identify final community monitoring sites. And next slide, please. So that's the end of the update for the low-cost air quality monitoring pilot study. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to let me know. And I appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you, Lizzie. Any questions from the committee? There's a question.
How many locations again did you say you would be putting these low-cost monitors? Did you say 5?
Yes, there will be approximately 5. It kind of depends on what feedback we get from the community and also who will be interested in hosting the sites.
So when you say 5 locations, that basically means five monitors mounted on 5 individual homes?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? It broke out at the end.
So does that basically translate into 5 single-family homes that'll have this equipment installed on?
Oh, so the sites that we're looking at right now for the pilot phase, those will actually be, they won't be in single family homes or in the backyards of individuals. It'll be more in community locations. So we've looked at like community organizations that may have a building, or churches or other religious sites, or we've also been in contact with some schools. So right now for the pilot phase, we're just looking at the community organizations and the facilities in the communities so that we can really provide access to that data and make that more accessible to more people.
And what's the plan for, how are you going to, what is the data going to be used for? Like what will come out of it?
So right now we're just kind of seeing what that data will provide. And so ideally in the long run, it would help us inform the transportation planning decisions so that we can really know what are the impacts of transportation related air pollutants and how can we mitigate that.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I just wasn't sure if you were going to be comparing the data you get from these locations to other areas of the county to see well, is it worse here than it is compared to where we have our other monitors?
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. Right now, we are very limited with the number of monitors, and we're kind of targeting just along the interstates. We do have data from the regulatory monitors that are kind of scattered throughout the county. So we can compare that to that data. And Michelle, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that.
Thanks, Lizzie. No, I wanted to say you did such a great job and you've done such great work on this project. And EPC is super excited to be a partner in this with TPO and USF. And, you know, EPA is really interested in this type of work and how it will complement the work that we do on our regulatory monitors. And I think that as a pilot project, you know, it's really in the discovery stage of what's the data going to provide us and how we can use it. But I think long term, it could really grow and could be used in many places throughout the county, because it's going to kind of fill in where we're not collecting data. But we need to be able to look at that and compare it to, you know, what are the co-located monitors showing and how to reconcile what that data means with each other. And the component of equity and community involvement is tremendous. I mean, in building faith for, actions of the government, and just for getting people involved who are impacted in these ways that really haven't had a voice in the past, at least not like this, I think is a great component. So I don't know if I answered the questions. I know I kind of threw some stuff out there, but I just wanted to get that out that EPC is really proud to be a part of this project. We have our air monitoring people who are working on the technical side of providing recommendations and advice on where they should put the monitors, and components related to how do they get power and where do they collect the data, how do they analyze the data. And then I'm helping with promoting it through outreach and other various activities.
Okay, thank you. Did you have a question, Jim?
Yeah, no, I just want to add a comment to Brian's statement, maybe. I know I volunteered my home because I am like 2 houses from 275. But the reason I really like, hopefully, that location, besides knowing what my area looks like, but it could be a before and after to the DOT's noise walls. And I know there's some, discussion about do noise walls actually help with particulate matter and some other things. Some before and after for a project that intense would be really cool to find out how effective it is.
That's a good point.
Yeah, that is. Thank
Okay.
you.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, thank you, Lizzie. Appreciate your presentation today.
Thank you very much.
Next item on the agenda is the West River Multimodal Safety and Network Improvements. It says City of Tampa. Is this?
Nina.
Is Nina doing that? I saw it on there earlier, so.
Right, so Nina, are you comfortable receiving the controls to your own slides?
Do you want me to, I'm getting a show my screen.
Yes, go for it. You can do it, sure, thank you.
Can you see it?
Yep.
Yes, we can, thank you.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Nina Mobilo, City of Tampa Transportation Project Coordinator in the Mobility Department. I've been a design engineer, production engineer, if you will, for the past 20 plus years here. And last summer, the city applied for a build grant through the US DOT, and we're working through the Federal Highway Administration in Orlando, who's administering that as a direct recipient of this grant. We were informed in September that we were awarded the grant. We're calling the project West River District Multimodal Improvements. Its formal name, should you see that, is called Tampa Multimodal Network and Safety Improvements, which is quite a mouthful. So we call it West River District Multimodal. It's a joint project between the Mobility Department and our City of Tampa Parks and Recreation Department. It includes both on and off-road segments, and it touches on the mayor's major initiatives, Tampa Moves, Vision Zero, Transforming Tampa's Tomorrow. This project is going to connect downtown and the West Tampa area with Bayshore Boulevard on the south, Hyde Park, North Hyde Park, Riverside Heights, Bowman Heights, Tampa Heights, Ridgewood Park, and Ybor City to complete over 12-mile multimodal path and complete streets that will complement the project. We're going to be adding to the city's low-stress walk bike network by providing this multimodal path that's going to be separated from vehicle traffic. And in the interest of Vision Zero, we want to provide safety in this area that's experiencing a high number of pedestrian and bicycle crashes by building the complete streets through the West River area and adding traffic calming improvements. The project supports the quality of life and economic competitiveness by providing a dedicated ped and bike link between the disadvantaged communities in that project area, the downtown employment centers, and essential services. Not everyone has a vehicle, and you've got University of Tampa, et cetera, students using bicycles, scooters, etc. And this will be a safe way for them to traverse the area, the greater area, as our downtown improvements spread to the west. Sustainability and resilience. We're going to be restoring some native shoreline at different areas within the project, which will increase wildlife rehabilitation, filter some stormwater runoff, and increase resiliency to high tides and storms that we may get due to hurricanes, etc.
Hey, Nina, really
Yes.
I was gonna say the slides aren't moving ahead, but now they are.
Okay, yeah, and Nina,
Okay.
we can see your notes pages, so we
Oh,
weren't
you
sure
can see
about,
my note pages.
yeah, we
Well,
weren't sure about which presenter mode you were in.
Can you see? I'm trying to present the slideshow to you and the notes to me. Let's try this. How's that? Now what do you see?
That's great, just a slide.
Okay, great. So on average each year in Tampa, based on the 2014 to 2018 data, we have 44 people killed annually and 289 people severely injured. And those numbers are not acceptable. We'd like to get them to zero. And of course, we're doing whatever we can as fast as we can to get those numbers down as close to zero as soon as possible. How do we get there? Our safe system approach includes people, streets, speeds, vehicles, and then post-crash care. And safety, of course, is the #1 objective for predominantly the often overlooked users of the roadway, pedestrians, bicyclists, anybody who might be a disadvantaged person trying to navigate the roadways, because vehicles are heavy and they usually are not the loser in an accident, but of course you have vehicle accidents as well. Our project team for this is our mobility department, Vic Bidate, the director, myself, Cal Hardy is our capital projects manager, and Danny Jorgensen is the new transportation engineering manager for our group. We're working with Parks and Recs department, and their personnel is listed here: Sharisa Hills, Brad Suter, Carla Price, and Tony Monk. Those are the major landscape planners. You may know their names. Brandy Miklas is our infrastructure and mobility program coordinator, and she's handling a lot of the public outreach for the project. We are working with our own historic preservation department because there are some historic elements along the 6 miles of this corridor, as well as a local and national historic district, particularly at the south end where Platt Street is. And then Catherine Hayes is our grant supervisor. She helped write the grant that we won. And Stephen Benson, as you may know, is our planning department director. This is the overall schematic for the project limits. It is one project, and it's broken into 6 segments, both for independent utility and for financial project numbers with the FHWA. I'm going to go through each segment. Like I said, segments 1 and 2 is about 2.6 miles. That is off the road along the western side of the river, predominantly on the land, although there are a few overwater segments that I'll get into. In addition to segment 6 that comes down from Columbus Drive to the river, where it would meet with the existing Eastern River Walk at Tampa Heights. Our complete streets are segments 3, 4, and 5. Platt Street from the river to Rome Avenue from Platt Street to Columbus, and then Columbus Drive from Rome to North Boulevard. And then we have that 6th segment. So segment 1 includes 2 overwater pedestrian underpass bridges, one under the Platt Street Bridge and one under the Brewerine Street Bridge, and they're connected by an on-land park, basically Tony Jannus Park, there between the 2 bridges. What you see here are some of our conceptual estimates for the costs. The feds are contributing 80%, which is 24 million, and the city's contributing $6+ million to meet or exceed the 20% match. We're going to be advertising the project this summer as a design build because we only have done conceptual work, both planning, estimates, etc. And because of the Federal Highway Administration's deadline to obligate the funds, which is this summer, we're working on completing the NEPA process so we can advertise an award. The actual award will likely happen in early 2023. So in this picture here, you're looking at the Western River edge, looking north under the Selman Expressway at the Broering Street Bridge. And the Selman Expressway in our same time frame, which will extend through 2026, is going to be widening their facility to the north and south as well. And then ultimately, they're also going to be widening in the median. So this shows the fenders and the area on the west side. I'm trying to fly through this. I do have 30 slides, and so we have time for questions. Segment 1, what I've shown here is some pictures of, this is the north end of Tony Jannus Park where it meets the Broering Street Bridge. This is the south side of the Platt Street Bridge, which I don't know if you're familiar, is currently gated off. There's a very short, doesn't have height to it, and it's dark facility that goes under Platt Street Bridge, but it's not safe, so it's gated off. But we're going to bypass this with our underpass bridge coming from underneath Platt Street, and it's going to connect a little farther south about the Columbus Park, North Bayshore Boulevard. And then this is upper left is a picture of the existing Tony Jannus Park connection, which may be changed or relocated. We're going to be redoing that whole park likely after the expressway and the city do their improvements in the area. And here on the upper right-hand corner is existing Manor Riverwalk, which is just north of the Broering Street Bridge, and that's where the Broering Street underpass will connect to. This is again a segment of that Manor Riverwalk existing trail. They built this when they did their development and gave the city an easement. Now, since then, they've also added a water connection, like a floating dock for themselves. And at the south end of their project, just north of the Broering Street Bridge, there is a treed area where birds nest. So our proposed underpass will be north of the bird nesting area and south of their connection to the river. Now, let me point out the two areas north of the existing Manor Riverwalk, WFLA, which is Tampa Tribune site, and also this Lafayette Place just south of Kennedy Boulevard. Those are private developments. WFLA does have a condition in their rezoning to build their part of the Riverwalk, not unlike this one that you're looking at that exists. They were one parcel and they split into two. So they have a commitment to build their part of the Riverwalk and give the city an easement. Lafayette Place has it as a bonus condition if they want to exceed a certain floor to area ratio, which I believe is 3.5. They currently don't have any plans to do that, but we're working with all the property owners so we can make the entire route contiguous by the time we open it in the end of 2026. This is a shot of our conceptual underpasses, the Platt Street Bridge. It's curvilinear here to facilitate movements by bicyclists, avoiding the sharp corners. And the Broering Street underpass, this longer segment, we proposed when we weren't sure of the ownership south of the Broering Street Bridge, because the expressway does control the land underneath their facility, but they're going to be working with the city to give us an easement to also be in this property. We'd like to shorten up the bridge because it will cost less, but then there's the issue of darkness or shade, but we're going to be lighting our facility as well. So we do have some alternate alignments. So those are the overwater segments. This is a conceptual shot from the developer agreement for Lafayette Place, and this is the Kennedy Boulevard Bridge. They'll be not only building the portion on the seawall along their property frontage, but also the connection under the Kennedy Boulevard to the Plant Park on the at the University of Tampa on the north side. Like I said, they don't have a schedule for that currently, but we're working with them on that. Segment 2 goes all the way from Plant Park up to Rome Avenue. I could go back to that original slide to show you. Segment 2 is quite long. Here's from Kennedy Boulevard all the way up past Stewart Elementary to Rome Avenue, I'm sorry. And there are multiple components to this: the Plant Park Trail, the Living Shoreline, Blake Trail, Stewart Middle School, and the MLK Crossing. Stewart Middle School, the MLK Community Center, which is city property, and then the Blake Trail Living Shoreline. There's basically 4 areas of living shoreline that are minimally proposed with the project. You know, Blake High School is right at the bend in the river. There's one on the north side of Blake and one on the east side of Blake. There's one at Tampa Prep, and then there's one at Tony Jannus Park between the 2 bridges. And we've left it open for the bidders of this design build project as an innovation. If they want to propose additional areas, the city would welcome that. At Tampa Prep, between Tampa Prep and the University of Tampa, there's an existing pedestrian crossing across Cass Street, and we are going to utilize that with this project because there is not enough vertical clearance to go underneath both the railroad bridge and the Cass Street Bridge, those 2 older bridges. We're trying to keep a minimum clear height for people on bicyclists, etc. And we're working with the University of Tampa. They do have an existing segment. We have an easement along the University of Tampa that we may be widening so we can make further enhancements to the trail. And Plant Park is actually city property that the university leases from us either 50 or 99 years at a time, which happens to be expiring actually this year. Tampa Prep School will be fenced to separate it as an under K-12 school from the public Riverwalk, and they will have a gate that they can open to their property should they choose to. Their seawall's in very bad shape. There's about 300 feet of it that will basically be removed and replaced with living shoreline, which is more of a stepped or sloped recreation of the natural interface between the river and the land. This is up at Blake where I was talking about. There is also existing facility there, but it's in rather poor condition and it's probably going to be completely removed and rebuilt. The minimum trail width most places is 12 feet. Tony Jannus Park, it's 15 feet. And I think when we get to segment 6, you'll see there's one segment that's could be as small as 8 feet to match existing facility in that area. So basically the off-road trail parts all consist of this 12-foot minimum path with pedestrian scale lighting. We're proposing 1 pedestrian scale light every 50 feet. And then additional innovations that we'd like to see from the different bidders would be seating, plazas, bike repair station perhaps, canopy trees, landscaping, but that remains to be seen. So once we go around Blake High School, you've got the segment where the Blake ball fields are. The city does have fee title to the land both at Stewart Middle School and around Blake High School. So we won't be going on school property at all for that. Up along Stewart Middle School, we're continuing along the river. And when you get past their track here, which you can see in this picture. Oh, let me see, which picture am I looking at? Yeah, you can see the ball fields here. When you get past the jogging track at Stewart Middle School, the multimodal trail goes directly to the west through this triangular area, which used to be Yellow Jackets Little League parcel, which is now defunct and part of the Rome Yard redevelopment by Related Group, both this triangular parcel and this bigger parcel north of the path between what's Palmetto Street, where it says Martin on your screen, that's actually Palmetto Street, all the way up to St. Louis. That's the Rome Yard redevelopment. And the Rome Yard developer will be building the little piece between Stewart Middle School and the MLK Rec Center on that property, as well as up along his western property line along Rome Avenue right away. The Rome Avenue, or the related group, calls this part of their development the Art Walk, and I think it may be end up being the fanciest part of the trail. This is the MLK Junior Rec Center complex, and we will be building the trail connecting the two pieces of the Rome Yard here at, I believe this is Oregon Avenue and Rome Avenue through MLK site with lighting and the trail, and then connecting to Rome Avenue. Now, even though the trail basically goes here to the north, we hope to also have this trail, which is going to be 12-foot wide with a 4-foot furniture zone. So it'll be 16 feet on the eastern edge of the right of way. We hope to do a 12-foot trail also southward down to Spruce Street. This is another shot of livable shorelines. The picture on the right is actually at Julian B. Lane Park, showing some riprap and stage shoreline with some plantings on it. And there has been some preliminary design work done for the Tampa Prep School. It's going to be included in the RFP we advertised this summer as a reference document, so the design build team can utilize it, not utilize it, it's up to them. And the graphic is pretty small, but you can see it's kind of a stepped elevation to replace that seawall there that's failing. Let's see. Segment 3 is Platt Street from Rome to Bayshore. We're going to be putting a separated bicycle facility, separated with a raised divider. Of course, Platt Street is one-way eastbound, and also adding some on-street parking where we can. Some places the raised separator will have to go to just striping, but we're going to put as much parking, et cetera, as we can. And Platt Street also includes a railroad crossing just west of the Selman Expressway, that we may have to do some enhancements to that railroad crossing as well. Rome Avenue goes from Platt Street up to Columbus Drive. This graphic shows it separated into 2 segments because it's so long. And let me show you this. Whoops. This is a piece of Rome Avenue that already exists. I couldn't tell you the cross street, although it's near Cass, where the city recently did the Cypress Street outfall project, and they did make some of these improvements on Rome Avenue. Rome Avenue will have a on-road bicycle facility, both north and southbound. It may not be separated physically with a raised separator, but it will have at least double striping to separate it, you know, as long as we have the width. And also some proposed on-street parking. A lot of this older businesses and development along here, they don't have adequate parking. So we're going to provide as much parking as we can in the right of way, while providing, we've narrowed the lanes for vehicles, and we're going to be slowing the traffic. So that's what Rome Avenue will look like. Let's see. Columbus Drive is actually a county road, and the county has plans to resurface Columbus Drive and make miscellaneous improvements. They're probably going to do that in 2023. So the city is going to be doing, as you know, whatever the county doesn't do and what we can fit within the right of way. The right of way is very narrow, excuse me. And we plan to make ADA improvements at all the driveways, ped ramps, at a few crossings, particularly here at Glenwood, where we're going to go south into the neighborhood. And across the bridge, let me see if I have a slide on this. I don't. Across the bridge, we hope to install a new barrier. So as the trail goes north on Rome Avenue and you want to go east across the Columbus Drive Historic Bridge, there'll be a protected area for both pedestrians and bicyclists to cross the bridge, separate from vehicles. And with narrower lanes, et cetera, that can reduce speeds across the bridge, making it safer for everybody. So Columbus Drive is going to go all the way to North Boulevard, but then from Glenwood, if you're familiar, there's a north and south bound lanes separated by a wide grass median, which is actually a park. And at the south end, let me go to this next slide. There's an existing butterfly garden just north of, I believe it's Ross Avenue, which is this final block here. You see how it's solid? So we're going to be connecting that northward to meet with the Columbus Drive improvements. And then it goes along Ross and down Cruzacade Place on the west side of North Boulevard, underneath the North Boulevard Bridge, where it's going to connect to the Heights development where their existing Riverwalk ends. This is a shot of the Rome Yard development I mentioned earlier. And here's the Stewart Middle School track. And you can see these orange stripes, these orange arrowheads denote the alignment of the multimodal trail as it goes through this Rome Yard, through their Avenue of the Arts, and then into this existing MLK Rec Center site. And Parks is working with Rome Yard as to what community enhancements are going to be included, et cetera. This is an oblique view of that same path as you leave the river and head east toward Rome Avenue. And we're working with Related Group as well. We have many other multimodal and safety improvements in the area. Bayshore Boulevard and Platt Street intersection. We hope to make some changes there to make it safer for all users. Brewerine Street Bridge and Cass Street Bridge are being rehabilitated. This is a picture looking west across the Brewerine Street Bridge, and you can see we're proposing wide sidewalks. I think they're 8 feet on both sides of the bridge. The Columbus Drive resurfacing I just mentioned. We're putting in a new traffic signal at Kennedy and Rome Avenue. Cypress Street, Complete Streets, I'm personally not familiar with. And of course, we have the Green Spine cycle track that we just completed segment 3A from Nebraska to 7th Avenue. And at the end of the month, we're opening the rebids on segments 3B and 3C that will go from 7th Avenue up Nucio and 15th Street to 21st Avenue. We're trying to, expand the facilities. That's a separated cycle track bi-directional as well. Laurel Street and Boulevard, there's going to be a traffic signal. Main Street visioning with the West Tampa CRA. Platt and Fremont is going to have a new traffic signal. The Ridgewood Park has neighborhood improvements currently underway. And then you've got West Tampa's complete multimodal plan. This slide is in here because we talked to the mayor's joint ADA committee to show them that we are going to use the PROAG guidelines to make it as safe as possible for all pedestrians and bicyclists. And it'll meet all the trail provisions as well, particularly the off-road segments. This is just an example of our community outreach. We've been doing ongoing outreach. Primarily, we started with the property owners that are directly along the route. And now we're expanding to the Friends of the Riverwalk, West Tampa CRA. We have a web page set up, which I'm sure here is on one of the last slides, as well as a project-specific email for anyone's questions or comments. Feel free to share that with everyone. And we're trying to get as much input as we can because the way the design build is going to be advertised and awarded, it's going to be basically a lump sum price up front. So we're trying to include everything in the RFP to avoid as many change orders as possible once the project gets awarded. This is the historic district I was talking about. You've got the local historic Hyde Park. I don't know if you can see well. Let me see if I can enlarge this. The blue lines are the National Historic District and the red lines are the local historic district, which covers the south end of the project. And there is some existing granite curb, particularly Rome Avenue, I know has some. And when we do on-street parking, we may move that curb to the high side where it's not really functioning as drainage, but it's still going to be an aesthetic aspect for the project and historical. This past December, we submitted our draft RFP package to the FHWA for their review. We're currently still working with them to finalize the grant agreement, which we're targeting to go to City Council on March 3rd. We have to wait for them to go ahead and tell us to execute the document, but we've basically already got slotted that for March 3rd, in which case we'll have to pull it if all the ducks don't fall into a row by then. And we hope following the execution of the grant agreement, we're working with the FHWA to get their concurrence on the RFQ package. And NEPA approval is expected in late July or August. That's the critical milestone because the NEPA approval will have to be in place prior to awarding to the design build team. So when I say combined RFQ, RFP, we're going to RFQ, request qualifications from all interested parties. We're going to shortlist the top 3 firms, and then those 3 firms are going to be submitting technical proposals for us to grade and approve. And the funds have to be spent by 2027. So with punch list, etc. We've made a substantial completion date. This December 11 date isn't accurate. It's actually December 31st. And then that gives us the first 6 months of 2023 to wrap up all the closeout paperwork, etc. So here's where we are now, trying to complete the grant agreement. Public engagement and stakeholder outreach is ongoing. We're going to be presenting to all the various committees probably this month. The NEPA clearance by the summer. We're still working in-house to finalize our RFP package, which we may be doing right up until FHWA gives us their concurrence to advertise. The city does design builds, but we usually do progressive design builds. So this adjusted score design build is something of a little different animal than we're used to. But we expect to execute our grant agreement in March and then go to construction early 23 through 26. And these are our different partners and agency stakeholders: the county, Expressway Authority, Downtown Partnership, NACTO, ITE, US DOT, HART, DOT, League of American Bicyclists, the TPO, and I think that's about it. These are our future users of the facility and the future of our area. Somebody took this picture at a recent bike event where they teach the kids how to ride safely and wear helmets, etc. And this picture is showing all that's going on downtown. You know, the Easy Paint Saves Lives projects and how it will connect with the west side as we continue redeveloping the west side of the river. So any questions?
Wow. Thank you, Nina. Any questions from the committee? Jay, this question?
So yeah, I got a couple of questions and conversations really, Nina, which that was a great conversation, a great presentation. So the multiple phases in the request that you guys are sending out, are you looking then for one firm to do all phases? And,
correct.
And do they have to go phase 1 through, or can they start the phases all at the same time?
They're not phases, they're segments. Let me go back to the slide. And it is one project. All 6 segments are one project. The order doesn't matter to us. We're leaving that up to the design build team to give us their proposed schedule. They might want to do the easier segment first. They might want to do segment 3, segment 1, which includes the 2 pedestrian underpasses. They're going to have to coordinate with the Selman Expressway improvements happening there. So these segment names and numbers don't imply phasing in time, but the whole project's going to be done sometime between 23 and 26. And since it hasn't really been designed, the RFP is basically asking for 30% design plans from all 3 proposers. And we're offering stipends to the 2 proposers that are unsuccessful so they can recoup some of that effort. And then the city will own the intellectual property and we can share that with whoever is the successful bidder. So between, I would think the design would take the first year between 23 and 24, and that only leaves 2 or 3 years to build it out.
Yeah, and I blinked. How are we crossing Columbus, the bridge?
We're not planning on making modifications or we're not planning on widening that bridge at all. I believe it currently has a striped out area in the middle, and I don't have a picture handy of the county's plans for the Columbus Drive Bridge, but our intention is to put another separator there, some sort of railing, and leave a wide area on the south side of the bridge for both pedestrians and bicycles to use that will protect them from traffic.
Okay. And then, I'm sorry, everybody, I'm using all the time. And my last thing was the CSX, that line right there next to the University of Tampa. And you showed that crossing at Cass.
Yeah, Cass Street.
Yeah, so are you saying then that we'll come up off of the river between the University of Tampa and the CSX line there and look for property either at CSX to give an easement through CSX right there? Or does the city still have property there? Or is that UT property you're looking at? It's just right there to be able to run a trail next to CSX.
Yeah, CSX. Oh, I lost my slide. Hang on.
Because honestly, if you could run a trail next to even 20, 30, 40 feet of CSX right there, I would say, why can't we do it all the way down to Port Tampa City?
Well, we're actually, I've got the slide up now. Am I sharing?
Uh-huh.
Okay. We have an easement already with the University of Tampa that parallels the river and then heads to the west to their northern entrance at University Drive, I believe it's called. And we're going to stop our trail there. And then the university is doing their own improvements on their drive. So we're staying on university property. North of the university is the CSX right-of-way. There are already pedestrian facilities crossing that facility. So we're not planning on interacting with CSX there. And then north of CSX tracks is our own Cass Street right-of-way where we have this existing crossing you see. And it already has RFBs, et cetera. We might be adding some signage, for instance, railroad crossing ahead, that kind of thing. But we're not going to be making a lot of changes here. I think once we get on the north side of Cass, we may be widening the sidewalk if we can along the frontage of Tampa Prep. But besides the easement that we're getting from Thea at the south of Burring Street Bridge, the city has all the property rights that they already need for this project.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions?
Your grant writer should get a bonus. That was pretty awesome. And all of your work, it's really impressive. Excited.
I'm sorry, I only caught half of that.
I was pushing for a bonus for both all of you and your grant writer.
Well, ask us in a few years if we live through it.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't see any other questions. Thank you.
Okay, I appreciate it. I'm gonna have to sign off for another meeting. Thanks.
Next item on the agenda, the Hillsborough County multimodal level service update, and Wade, I believe, is supposed to speak to that. There we go.
Yes, sir. Just one second. Okay, are you all able to see my screen?
Yes.
Great. So this is an update to the multimodal level of service update we did back in 2019. The county is looking to include bicycle and pedestrian level of service in the capital improvements elements in the update of the comprehensive plan. So that's where this project comes from. So looking at the previous methodology, which divided up level of traffic stress for both bicyclists and pedestrians into 4 categories of level of traffic stress, this was the map that was produced from that. You can see that most areas of the unincorporated county fall into that higher LTS4 category. So a big part of the methodology here is to look at some other ways to differentiate those roadways so that improvements in facilities can be reflected in the level of service for bicyclists and pedestrians. So one of the big changes is going from 4 categories of level of traffic stress to 6, A through F, as we do for vehicle level of service. So in many ways, what you're seeing is that 4th category being divided up into 4, 5, and 6. So we've working with Hillsborough County Public Works and Community and Infrastructure Planning, we have sort of a hybrid methodology here. For roadways with facilities, we are using this table provided by your staff. You can see as the facilities go up in separation or safety from shared lane markings with low speeds to a multi-use trail with even up to higher speeds, you can still achieve in that right column a high level of service, an A, a 1, whatever you want to call it. Whereas over to the left, as the speed goes up, you'll end up with those 3, 4s, and 5s, and the NAs ultimately become 6 or failing for that vehicle level of service. We don't actually provide really shared lane markings for anything over 35. So that's why that's NA, and that would get into the mixed traffic assessment, which I will get to in just a moment. And the map at right here, I should mention, basically that's just applying it to the roadways with facilities. So most of what you see in gray there either does not have a facility or would fall into one of those NA categories at the moment. So looking at FDOT's multimodal level of service methodology, there are several good things to look at there, particularly for mixed traffic assessments. So we pulled out a number of those and came up with some volume thresholds for the mixed traffic assessment. This would be for, well, I'll get to the speeds with these volumes in a second, but looking at the top highlighted portion there, so where there's no bike lane, you have various volume thresholds for each level of service. So those mixed traffic thresholds, you can see the box in red here. At the top left of each one of those boxes is an urban 30 miles per hour, urban 35 miles per hour, urban 40, urban 45. So there are volume thresholds for each one of those for shared facilities, and that's what we are proposing to use to differentiate those shared use facilities. So those could improve over time by either adding facilities, lowering the speed through different measures, not just changing the signs, but narrowing the lanes or doing other protective measures to help lower those speeds or help bring those speeds down. Just to give you an idea of how this compares to what we were looking at before, this was the previous level of traffic stress mixed traffic methodology. Basically anything over 35 miles per hour in mixed traffic was coming up as a level of traffic stress 4. So adding those differentiations for the speed and the volume sort of takes us to those 5 and 6 levels for each speed. And looking at the pedestrian level of traffic stress, again, you can see many of the same things we talked about before. Much of the unincorporated county does show up as that higher level of traffic stress, and I will show you why in a second. So previously, this top box with the LTS4 next to it, is there a minimum 5-foot sidewalk on both sides? If the answer is no, it's a level of traffic stress 4. What we've added to that is there a sidewalk on one side? That becomes a level of traffic stress 5. And if there's no sidewalk, that becomes, or a level of service E. And then if there's no sidewalk, it becomes a level of service F. So by adding or completing a sidewalk on one side of the street, you can move out of that F category and continue to move up as those facilities are constructed. And the result we get with that is the map you see before you. Where there was previously a lot of red, you end up with a lot of orange and yellow and red. So it does provide that differentiation and a way to basically track improvements as we complete sidewalks on at least one side of those facilities. So just this is as far as we've gotten with the bicycle level of traffic stress, but we just have a few more categories to move in with the different roadway speeds, and looking forward to bringing that to the Board of County Commissioners and BPAC soon. So I believe that's all, and I'm happy to answer any questions if the committee may have them.
All right, thank you, Wade. Any questions from the committee?
And the goal is to get this into the comprehensive plan, which is, you know, a really significant piece. So
right.
Thanks, Wade, for working on that so much. I know there's some more mapping exercises that you're gonna have to pull together, but this seems really logical and helpful.
Yes. Okay, I don't see any questions, Wade. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you all.
Next item is old or new business. Any old or new business from the committee? All right, seeing none.
And our next meeting is the 7th of March.
Yes. Okay, seeing none, I think we're adjourned.
All right.
Thank you,
See you
everybody.
guys next month.
Thank you.
Eat. Eat.
Yeah, I started
They got the key off.
You got it.